Hi Arrows, I'm Kashan and you are watching The Book Archer. Today I am doing the if you liked this book, try this book. I don't know if it's a tag or where it originated from, but if I do find the original creator, I will leave the information. But this is basically where you take a more popular book that people know and love and suggest another book that you feel is similar or another book that you think that the same type of reader would enjoy. I have 5 popular books to show y'all and then 5 suggested reads to go along with these. What I'm basing these suggestions off of is really 2 things. The first one being a similar plot, and then the other thing that I think makes the 2 books similar is very much tone and vibe of the book. Let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So if you liked Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli, then you might like The Field Guide to the North American Teenager by Ben Philippe. At their core, they're both high school centered coming of age stories featuring a male character. Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda is about this male main character who is in either his junior or senior year, who is having this secret whirlwind romance, like an online romance with another guy, but he hasn't officially come out yet. Someone discovers these emails at his school and then they threaten to blackmail him, and that's kind of where the story takes off. The Field Guide to the North American Teenager follows this male main character who lives in Canada and is forced to relocate down onto the heart of Texas. And it's really him grappling with the reasons why they've decided to relocate, trying to find his way throughout American high school, especially in the South. This main character is also Haitian Canadian. So both of these stories feature diverse male main characters. They're both coming of age stories. Some of the other similarities I found while reading these 2 stories are the strong family dynamics. They have these complex familial relationships and you really get to see those explored. And then lastly, both of these main characters has a central hobby that plays a part in the story. In Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, Simon is a part of theater, so you get to see how he works that into his life. And then in The Field Guide to the North American Teenager, Norris is heavily into hockey. I definitely suggest checking them out. The Field Guide to the North American Teenager is so snarky and funny. And then if I can, I will insert the picture of the new cover, which I love a lot more. The new cover is kind of a better representation of the novel, so yes. Next up we have the infamous 6 of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. If you like 6 of Crows, The Last Magician by Lisa Maxwell. I know what you're thinking. This has kind of been talked about on BookTube a lot, so it's not necessarily an underrated series, but I really wanted to compare these 2 because The Last Magician is one of the few books that reminds me of 6 of Crows without feeling like a complete knockoff. This is interestingly its own story, and I didn't even realize the similarities to 6 of Crows until after I had read the story and I was still thinking about the book. 6 of Crows just follows this misfit band of a found family as they go on this seemingly impossible heist. The Last Magician follows this main character, Esther, who can time travel. At the beginning of this novel, she travels back to 1902 in New York City to find this missing artifact, and she has to band up with this local crew to basically steal this artifact. The things that make these 2 stories similar is that they both feature the underbelly of the cities. 6 of Crows features the dregs. It has all these like multiple gang bosses and intricate underbelly politics that you get to see. And then this story features those same things. There are some characters in there that Esther gets in league with. Those are not necessarily the characters that are at the forefront of this story, but they play very important parts in the story. The story is very much still about Esther and one other character. If you haven't checked out The Last Magician, I highly recommend it. Next up, if you liked The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo, then you should try Pride by Ibby Zaboy. I decided to pick these 2 books because while I was reading Pride, immediately I was thinking, okay, this reminds me so much of an Elizabeth Acevedo book. If you don't know, Poet X follows this main character, this girl from Harlem who has a strained relationship with her mother, and you kind of get to see how she explores that relationship, but poetry becomes an outlet for her, she turns into like a spoken word, a slam poet, and you get to see her perform her poetry throughout the book. It's also a coming of age story. You get to see her exploring her first dive into romance, and then you get to a strong sense of her environment in Harlem and in New York. Pride is a Pride and Prejudice remix. It takes place in one of the boroughs in New York. The main character has lived in Bushwick her entire life, and now there is this family that has moved in across the street, and they're a very well-off family. They have a son who the main character won't admit that she likes, but she does. It kind of takes off from there, but it also has a lot to do with this character really coming to terms with how things are changing around her and coming to terms with what she wants to do once she graduates high school. Elizabeth Acevedo, the author of The Poet X, she actually narrates the audiobook for Pride. There's actually a scene in the book where the main character performs some of her spoken word poetry. You do see other parts of the story where she is actually writing. It plays a much smaller role in Pride than it does in The Poet X, but the similarities are glaring, and I really enjoyed that, because if you're not like huge on poetry and you don't want to read a whole book with a lot of spoken word mixed into it, Pride would be perfect because it just gives you just enough. If you like The Poet X, then I would definitely try Pride. I will enjoy it. Next up, we have another fan favorite, and that is the Infernal Devices trilogy by Cassandra Clare, Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Prince, and Clockwork Princess. So if you enjoy the Infernal Devices trilogy, you may like Strange and Deadly trilogy by Susan Dennard. The Infernal Devices is a historical fiction fantasy set in Victorian London that has all of the magical creatures that you can imagine. Angels, demons, vampires, werewolves, fairies, just basically you get a little bit of everything. But it follows this main character, Tessa Gray. She's navigating Victorian London. Something Strange and Deadly follows Eleanor, who lives in Philadelphia in the year, I think it's like it's during the 1800s. It's similar to the Victorian era. The story starts when her brother is missing and she just feels as if something is wrong. But in this world, they have basically zombies, a zombie outbreak in her city. So there is a lot of necromancy, but there's also this demon hunting, zombie hunting society called the Spirit Hunters, who she happens to run into. As you all know, the Infernal Devices features the Shadow Hunters that are all throughout the series. So those two already reminded me of each other, but just the time period and the type of fantasy story plus the characters in there, they both have steampunk elements and secret societies. These two for me were two of the most satisfying trilogy conclusions ever. I really loved both of them a lot, and they are trilogy conclusions that I think about often. Also, I feel like the series get better with each book. These stories were just so satisfying. If you're just looking for something that's kind of like historical fiction, paranormal, I highly recommend Something Strange and Deadly trilogy. Next up, we have Serpent and Dove by Shelby Manarin. If you liked Serpent and Dove, then you should try To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. Also, I guess if you hated Serpent and Dove, then you should avoid this one, because we already know how a lot of y'all feel about this book. These two are so similar to me, especially in plot. In Serpent and Dove, we follow two main characters, and it's a dual perspective book. We follow a witch and a witch hunter. They are forced to wed. The witch hunter does not know that the main character is a witch, so she is secretly trying to keep the fact that she's a witch away so her husband doesn't kill her. This one follows a siren and a siren hunter. This siren loses like her mermaid form, and she's forced to like walk amongst men, but she basically comes in contact with this siren killer, and of course he doesn't know that she is a siren, and she's trying to keep her siren nature hidden from him. If you like your fantasy with forbidden love or hate to love, then these are a good picks for you. And if you like heavy romance influence in your fantasy, then I would definitely check out either of these. Those are the 5 books that I recommend if you like those other 5 popular books. What are some books that y'all would love a similar recommendation for? Leave that down in the description box below. There are some that I'm already looking at based on the comments that y'all have been leaving in other videos, but let me know, because I am willing to read stuff just to see if it's similar to something that you might like. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at theBookArcher, and I will see y'all in my next video. Bye!